The massive chamber floated in the void of space, a monument to galactic cooperation that had stood for 3,000 years. Inside, representatives from 12 different species sat in a circular arrangement, each on platforms designed for their unique physiologies. The air was filtered through 7 different systems to accommodate beings who breathed everything from methane to pure oxygen. Translator devices hummed softly, converting thousands of languages into understanding. Ambassador Jiwoo sat perfectly still in the human section. She wore a simple gray suit, her hands folded on the desk before her. Next to her, Captain Daesung stood at attention in his military uniform, and young Hannah sorted through data tablets with quick, nervous movements. They were the only 3 humans in a room filled with hundreds of alien dignitaries. "Hi, Counselor." Vexstar rose from the central platform. His insectoid body gleamed under the chamber lights, mandibles clicking as the translator converted his speech. "We convened this emergency session to address the human problem. For 2 years, the species known as humanity has expanded into 17 contested sectors. They build colonies without permission. They claim worlds without consulting this council. They act as if our laws do not apply to them." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. Jiwoo did not move. Her dark eyes watched Vexstar, with an expression that revealed nothing. "We have sent warnings," Vexstar continued. "We have sent requests. We have sent delegations. The humans smile, they nod, and then they do exactly as they please. This cannot continue. Today, we present humanity with terms that are not negotiable." A holographic document appeared in the center of the room, rotating slowly so all could see. The terms were clear and brutal. Humans would cease all colonization immediately. They would withdraw from 9 of their newest settlements. They would submit to council oversight on all future expansion. They would pay reparations for the disruption they had caused. They would allow council inspectors on all human worlds to ensure compliance. "These terms are generous," said Counselor Kixra, her reptilian features twisting into what might have been a smile. "We could demand much more. We could demand that humanity surrender its fleet. We could demand that Earth itself submit to our authority. But we are reasonable beings. We understand that humanity is young, that you do not yet understand how civilization works in this galaxy." More agreements echoed through the chamber. Several representatives nodded their various heads, appendages, and sensory organs. This was how things had always worked. A species stepped out of line, the council corrected them, and order was restored. It had happened 100 times before. "We give you 1 standard week to accept these terms," Vexstar declared. "After that, we will enforce them." The combined fleets of the council represent more than 10,000 warships. Humanity has perhaps 300. The mathematics are simple. You cannot fight us. You cannot resist us. You can only accept or be destroyed. The chamber fell silent. Every being present turned their attention to the human delegation. Jiwoo remained motionless for a long moment. Then she stood slowly, smoothing her suit with deliberate movements. Hannah looked up at her with wide eyes. Captain Daesung's jaw was clenched tight, but he said nothing. Jiwoo walked to the speaking platform. Her shoes clicked against the floor in the silence. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, sensors, and visual organs of representatives from a dozen worlds. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear. Oh, that was all she said. 1 word. Then she turned and walked back to the human section. She gathered her tablet, nodded to Hannah and Daesung, and headed toward the exit. The 2 other humans followed immediately. For 3 full seconds, nobody in the chamber moved. They had prepared for many possible responses. They had prepared for anger, for pleading, for counteroffers, for lengthy debate. They had not prepared for a simple refusal followed by departure. "Wait." Vexstar's voice cracked through the translator. "You cannot simply leave. We have not finished. You must negotiate. You must discuss the terms. You must—" Gu paused at the doorway. She looked back over her shoulder. "You said the terms were not negotiable, so there is nothing to discuss. Good day, Counselor." The door slid shut behind the humans with a soft hiss. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Representatives jumped to their feet, tentacles, and various locomotion appendages. Voices rose in a dozen languages, overwhelming the translators. Vexstar slammed his appendage against the platform, trying to restore order. "This is unacceptable," shouted one delegate. "They insult us. They insult the entire council." "They do not understand the gravity of their situation," said another. "They are like children who have not yet learned that fire burns." Counselor Kixra's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps we have been too gentle. Perhaps we should have made stronger demands from the beginning. Humans respond only to force, it seems." But one voice cut through the noise. Counselor Lithara, representing the aquatic Delphina, spoke slowly. "Did anyone else notice what just happened?" They did not argue. They did not get angry. They simply said no and left. "I have been on this council for 40 years. I've never seen a species do that, because no species has ever been that foolish," Vexstar snapped. "They will learn. Send a message to all council members. Begin preparations for a blockade of human space. If they will not see reason, we will teach them." Outside the chamber, Giwu walked calmly through the corridors of the station. Hannah hurried to keep up. "Ambassador, they are going to attack us. They have 10,000 ships. We cannot possibly—" "I know the numbers, Hannah," Giwu said quietly. "I have known them since before we arrived." "Then why did you refuse? Why did you not at least discuss the terms? Maybe we could have negotiated something better." Gu stopped walking. She turned to face her young aide. "Hannah, do you know why I was chosen as ambassador? It was not because I am good at negotiating. It was because I am very good at knowing when not to negotiate." Captain Daesung spoke for the first time. "They do not want to negotiate. They want to dictate. There is a difference." "Exactly," Giwu said. She started walking again. "My father once told me something. He said that the moment you negotiate from a position of fear, you have already lost everything that matters. The council believes we are afraid of their numbers. They believe we will surrender because the alternative is too terrible to consider, and we will not surrender." Hannah asked. Gu smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "Hannah, humanity has never been very good at doing what we are told, especially when someone tries to force us. Send a message to Earth. Tell President Sujin that the Council has refused peace. Tell her we are coming home. And tell her to prepare the colonies. Prepare them for what? For visitors who do not understand the meaning of the word no, they are about to learn." Their ship departed the station an hour later. Behind them, the Galactic Council continued to debate and plan. They were certain of their power. They were certain of their righteousness. They were certain that humanity would see reason once the fleets arrived. They were about to learn that certainty and truth are not always the same thing. The colony of New Jeju hung in space, like a small jewel against the darkness. 5,000 humans lived there, farming, building, and making a new home on a world with purple grass and 2 moons. They had been there for 18 months. They had broken no laws because there were no laws about settling empty worlds. But the Galactic Council had decided otherwise. Engineer Boyer stood on the observation deck of the main habitat, watching the alien fleet arrive. 200 ships appeared out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They were massive things, each one 3 times larger than the biggest human vessel. Their weapons bristled from every surface. They positioned themselves in orbit around New Jeju, like a ring of steel. Bohr's communicator chirped. "This is Commander Thalvar of the Council Enforcement Fleet. We are here to ensure compliance with Council. Resolution 473. All human colonists are ordered to evacuate this world within 48 hours. Failure to comply will result in the use of force. This is not a negotiation." Biora looked at the message, then deleted it. She went back to checking the irrigation systems for the southern farming sector. There was a problem with Pump 6 that needed attention in the Central Colony Administration Building. Governor Nam sat at his desk reviewing supply reports. Someone knocked on his door. It was his security chief, a nervous man named Minseok. "Sir, the Council fleet is demanding we evacuate. They say we have 48 hours. Governor Nam looked up. "Did they say anything else?" They said failure to comply will result in force. I see. Nam went back to his reports. Make sure everyone knows about the fleet. Tell them to continue with their regular work. If anyone wants to leave, we will provide transport. But we are not evacuating. And Siok blinked. Sir, there are 200 warships up there, as I can count. Is there anything else? No, sir. Then please close the door on your way out. I have budget numbers to finish. 48 hours passed. The colonists did not evacuate. Children went to school. Farmers tended their crops. Engineers maintained the power grid. A few families, frightened by the fleet overhead, took ships back toward Earth, but most stayed. Commander Thalvar could not undead. Stand it. In his 300 years of service, he had never seen a colony refuse evacuation when faced with overwhelming force. He sent another message, this time directly to Governor Nam. This is your final warning. Evacuate now, or we will land troops to enforce compliance. Nam's response came within minutes. This is an illegal occupation. We claim our right to self-defense under human law. Any hostile action will be met with appropriate force. We do not want conflict, but we will not abandon our homes. Thalvar's tentacles curled in frustration. These humans were insane. Did they not understand basic mathematics? He ordered 3,000 troops to prepare for landing. The dropships descended through New Jeju's atmosphere in neat rows. They headed for the main colony landing pad. As they approached, Thalvar expected to see chaos, panic, perhaps some scattered resistance. Instead, he saw something that made his blood run cold. The landing pad was ringed with defensive positions. Humans in armor stood behind barriers with weapons ready. They were not running. They were not panicking. They were waiting. Thalvar, second in command, spoke urgently. Commander, they have prepared defensive positions. They knew we were coming. Of course they knew. We told them, land the troops. They will surrender once they see our numbers. But the humans did not surrender. As the first dropship touched down, Governor Nam's voice came over all frequencies. You are violating our territorial space. Land troops, and we will consider it an act of war. Leave now, and no one needs to be hurt. Thalvar ordered the troops to deploy anyway. They poured out of the dropships, weapons ready, advancing on the colony perimeter. The humans did not fire first. They held their positions, watching the alien troops approach with weapons aimed but fingers off triggers. When the council troops reached 50 meters from the human positions, Biora pressed a button. Lights flared to life around the entire perimeter. Warning sirens began to wail, and a new voice spoke, one that made Thalvar's appendages freeze. Council forces? This is Admiral Taehyun of the Human Defense Fleet. You have 10 minutes to withdraw your troops and leave this system. After that, we will escort you out by force. Thalvar checked his sensors. His breath caught. Coming out of faster-than-light travel were 40 human warships. They were smaller than council vessels, but they moved with a speed and precision that spoke of serious military training. They formed up around New Jeju in a defensive screen. This is impossible, Thalvar whispered. How did they get here so fast? We had scouts watching all human fleet movements. His tactical officer spoke quietly. Sir, I think we only saw what they wanted us to see. Admiral Taehyun's fleet did not attack. They simply positioned themselves between the council force and New Jeju. The message was clear. If you want the colony, you will have to go through us. Don't have had 200 ships. The humans had 40. The mathematics said he should press forward. But something in the way the human ships moved, the way they held formation, the absolute lack of fear in their communications made him hesitate. He opened a private channel to Admiral Taehyun. Admiral, be reasonable. We outnumber you 5-1. You cannot win this fight. Taehyun's response was calm. You are correct, Commander. We probably cannot win. We will lose this fight. But not before we destroy at least half your fleet. Is enforcing an unjust demand worth the lives of 10,000 of your people? Because it is worth the lives of our people. We will not abandon them. This is madness. All we ask is that you follow the rules. The Council has maintained order in this galaxy for your rules, Tehain interrupted. Not ours. We do not recognize your authority over empty worlds. We do not recognize your right to tell us where we can and cannot live, and we will not negotiate this. You can leave peacefully, or you can attack, and we will defend ourselves. Those are your only options. Folvart looked at his sensor screens. The human ships were not dispersing. They were not trying to run. They were simply waiting. Weapons powered, but not locked on targets yet. On the planet below, the human colonists had returned to work. He could see them on his monitors. It's actually going about their daily tasks, while two fleets faced off above their heads. He had been in dozens of enforcement actions. Species always responded the same way. They blustered, they threatened, but when faced with overwhelming force, they negotiated. They found a compromise. They backed down. These humans were not following the script, Commander, his weapons officer said. The Council is demanding a report. They expect us to have secured the colony by now. Thulvar made a decision that would end his career, but save his life and the lives of his troops. Recall all landing forces. Prepare to withdraw from the system. Sir, you heard me? We are leaving. The Council can come here themselves if they want to remove these colonists. I will not spend the lives of my people trying to evict settlers who have done nothing but build homes on an empty world. I will not start a war over a planet nobody else wanted until humans arrived. Recall the troops. Now, dropships lifted off. The Council fleet began to power up their faster-than-light drives. Admiral Tehain's voice came over the channel one last time. Thank you for making the wise choice, Commander. Safe travels. The Council fleet jumped too faster than light and disappeared. Admiral Tehain's ships remained on station for another week. Then they too departed, leaving behind a small defensive platform and the promise that they would return if needed. On New Jeju, life continued. Biora fixed Pump 6. Governor Nam finished his budget reports. Children played in the purple grass under two moons, and in the Galactic Council chambers. High Counselor Vexstar received commander. Thalvar's report and realized with growing horror that humanity was not going to be as easy to manage as predicted. The humans had not negotiated. They had not argued. They had simply prepared to fight and die for a small colony on an insignificant world. Vexstar called an emergency session. We underestimated them, he told the assembled representatives. They care nothing for our threats. They fear nothing, not even death. We need a new strategy. Counselor Kixra leaned forward. Then we give them something to fear. We gather a real fleet, not 200 ships. 2,000. We show them what happens when species defy the Council. The vote was unanimous. The Council would assemble the largest enforcement fleet in its history. They would teach humanity a lesson that would echo through the centuries. They still did not understand. Humans were not a species that learned lessons others tried to teach them. They were a species that learned by doing, by fighting, by refusing to quit, no matter the odds. The war was about to begin, and both sides were certain they would win. 6 alien civilizations met in secret to form what they called the Coalition for Galactic Order. They represented the strongest military powers in the Council, and they were done with patience. Humanity would be contained by force. The vote was taken in a closed session. No human representatives were invited. No warnings were sent. War Counselor Dexman addressed the gathering. His species, the Varathians, had never lost a military conflict in 800 years. We have assembled 4,000 warships. We have 500,000 troops. We will strike at 3 human colonies simultaneously. They cannot defend all of them. When they see their settlements burning, they will beg to negotiate. But on Earth, President Sujin was not preparing to negotiate. She stood in the underground command center beneath Seoul, watching holographic displays show the movement of alien fleets. Next to her, Ambassador Jiwoo had just returned from the failed peace talks. They believe we will break, Sujin said quietly. They think we are like them, that we calculate odds and make rational choices based on mathematics.
AudioBook
Nodded. They do not understand us yet. They think our refusal to negotiate is stupidity or pride. They have not considered that it might be principle. How many colonies will we lose? At least 2, possibly 3. They are coming with overwhelming force. Sujin closed her eyes for a moment. Each colony represented thousands of lives, years of work, dreams of a future among the stars. But she had read her history. She knew what happened when people negotiated from weakness, when they surrendered to bullies because the alternative was too terrible. Issue the order, she said. All colonies are to activate defense protocols. Military assets are authorized to engage any hostile forces. And send a message to the coalition. Tell them we will defend ourselves, but we still prefer peace. Give them one last chance to stop this. The message never received a reply. The coalition struck at dawn on 3 worlds. At the colony of Bright Harbor, 2,000 alien ships appeared in orbit. At New Osaka, another 1,000. At Liberty Point, 1,500 more. Each location was hit simultaneously in a coordinated assault designed to overwhelm human defenses. At Bright Harbor, Captain Daesung commanded the orbital defense platform. He had 40 ships under his command facing 2,000. The mathematics were simple and brutal. He opened a channel to his fleet. All ships, this is Daesung. They want us to run. They expect us to scatter and flee. But we are not going to do that. We are going to make them pay for every meter of space. We are going to hold this line until the colonists can evacuate. And if we fall knowing we did not surrender. Attack pattern, Delta. Execute. The human ships dove into the alien form. Asian like wolves among sheep. They were smaller, faster, and fought with a ferocity that shocked the coalition commanders. One human destroyer rammed an alien cruiser rather than let it break through to the planet. Another continued fighting with half its hull blown away, its crew refusing to abandon ship until the last weapon was silent. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, Bright Harbor was lost. The colony had to be evacuated, but the coalition paid for it with 300 ships destroyed and twice that many damaged. Captain Daesung's platform was the last thing still firing when the evacuation transports jumped to safety. He died with his hand on the trigger. At New Osaka, the result was similar. The colony fell, but not before inflicting terrible casualties. At Liberty Point, human forces actually held. Driving off the attack after a brutal 3-day battle, the coalition had won. They had taken 2 colonies and destroyed most of the defending fleets. By any military calculation, they should have been celebrating. Instead, War Counselor Thexman stared at casualty reports and felt his confidence waver. 800 ships, he said quietly. They destroyed 800 of our ships and damaged more than 1,000 others. They should have broken after the first hour. Their odds were impossible. Why did they keep fighting? His second whispered the answer. Because they do not care about odds. They care about principle. On Earth, President Sujin addressed her people. The transmission went to every human world, every ship, every outpost in space. Her face was tired, but her voice was steel. Today we lost 2 colonies. We lost thousands of brave defenders. The coalition believes this will make us negotiate. They believe we will see their power and surrender our rights, our freedom, our future. They are wrong. We did not come to the stars to bow to anyone. We did not leave Earth to find new masters. Every world we have settled was empty. Every home we have built was on land no one else wanted. We have broken no laws except the ones they invented to control us. She paused, letting her words sink in. The coalition has shown us what they are. They are bullies with big ships. They believe might makes right. So we will teach them a lesson that humanity learned long ago on Earth. We will teach them that people who fight for their homes are always more dangerous than soldiers who fight for orders. We will teach them that you cannot defeat an enemy who refuses to surrender. And we will teach them that there are worse things than death. Living on your knees is one of them. The transmission ended. Across human space, the reaction was not fear. It was anger. Colonies mobilized. Civilian ships were converted to military use. Factories that made farming equipment began making weapons. Engineers who designed habitats began designing fortifications. The entire human civilization shifted to war footing in a matter of days. Intelligence officer Young Ho worked from a secret facility, monitoring coalition communications. What he discovered made him smile. The aliens were arguing. 6 civilizations that had united to crush humanity were now blaming each other for the higher casualties than expected. Some wanted to press the attack. Others wanted to pause and reassess. They think we are like them, Young Ho reported to his superiors. They think we fight like them, calculate like them, fear like them. They do not understand that we are fundamentally different. They surrender when the cost gets too high. We just get angry. In the council chambers, the debate raged. Counselor Lithara, who had opposed the war from the start, stood to speak. I want to know one thing. What exactly are we fighting for? What did humanity do that was so terrible it required this war? They settled empty worlds. They refused to follow rules they had no part in making. They wanted to be left alone. And when we threatened them, they defended themselves. Where is the crime in this? The crime is defiance, Vexstar shouted. The crime is refusing to recognize council authority. If we allow humanity to ignore our rules, every other species will do the same. Order will collapse, Orlithera said quietly. Perhaps the order we have built is the problem. Perhaps we have grown so comfortable with our power that we have forgotten what it means to rule justly. Humanity is showing us something we have not seen in centuries. A species that will not be bullied. Maybe we should be asking ourselves why we feel the need to bully them. But Lithara's words were drowned out by calls for escalation. The coalition voted to prepare a second wave. This time, 10,000 ships. This time, they would not stop until humanity surrendered. In human space, preparations continued. Every world, every station, every ship was fortified. President Sujin met with her military commanders. Admiral Taehyun laid out the situation bluntly. They are coming with everything they have. We cannot win a straight fight. We do not have the numbers. Then we do not fight straight, Sujin said. Humanity has never been good at fighting fair. We are very good at fighting dirty. What do you need? Time, and the willingness to do whatever it takes. You have both. Make them regret starting this war. As the coalition prepared its massive fleet, human forces began a campaign of raids and ambushes. They hit supply convoys. They mined trade routes. They attacked repair facilities and shipyards. Small groups of human ships would appear, strike hard, and vanish before the enemy could respond. It was not the war the coalition expected. It was not the war they knew how to fight. And slowly, painfully, the cost began to mount. Not just in ships and lives, but in something more important, will. Coalition species began to question the war. Why were they fighting? What were they gaining? When would it end? The humans never asked those questions. They knew exactly why they were fighting. They were fighting for the right to be free. And that was a reason that would never run out. The war was 3 months old. Already it had cost more than any conflict in the last 1,000 years, and it was only beginning. The coalition was committed now. They could not back down without looking weak. But they were starting to realize that winning against an enemy who would never surrender might be impossible in the darkness of space. Ships burned. People died. Worlds fortified. And 2 very different philosophies were going to fight until one of them broke. The coalition believed in order through power. Humanity believed in freedom at any cost. Only one of them could be right. The galaxy was about to find out which one. 8 months into the war, the Galactic Council chamber looked nothing like the orderly institution it had been. Representatives shouted at each other across the room. Delegations walked out during sessions. 3 species had already withdrawn from the coalition. Unwilling to continue paying the price for what increasingly looked like an unwinnable war, War Counselor Thexman stood at the central platform, his voice hoarse from arguing. We have lost 4,000 ships. 4,000. The humans have perhaps 500 vessels left, but they refuse to surrender. They attack our supply lines. They mine our trade routes. They strike and vanish like ghosts. This is not warfare. This is savagery. Counselor Kixra, who had been one of the strongest voices for war, now looked tired and old. Perhaps we should have listened to Lithara. Perhaps we should have tried to understand the humans before we tried to crush them. It is too late for understanding, Vextar said. But his voice lacked conviction. We are committed. We must see this through. To what end? Lithara asked. She had been quiet for weeks, watching the coalition tear itself apart. What victory are we seeking? The humans have lost colonies. They have lost ships. They have lost thousands of lives. And yet they continue fighting with the same intensity as the day we attacked them. When will they break? When will they surrender? The chamber fell silent because no one had an answer. On the human colony of New Jeju, life continued despite the war. Engineer Biora was back at work, this time installing new defensive weapons around the agricultural sectors. The coalition had tried to retake New Jeju twice. Both times they had been driven off with heavy losses. Now the colony was one of the most fortified human positions in space. She was checking a weapons mount. When her communicator chimed, it was Governor Nam. Bora, we have visitors. Council ships just jumped in system. Biora felt her stomach tighten. How many? Just one. A diplomatic vessel. They are broadcasting on all channels that they want to talk. No weapons powered. They are just sitting there. It could be a trick. It could be... But they are asking specifically for Ambassador Kyung-suk. They say they have a message from the neutral faction. Ambassador Kyung-suk was a stern woman who represented the outer colonies. She had been a farmer before the war. Now she coordinated resistance efforts across a dozen worlds. When the council ship sent its message, she read it carefully. This is Counselor Lithara of the neutral faction. I come without weapons and without threats. I come to ask questions that my people need answered. Will you speak with me? Kyung-suk met with Lithara on a neutral station, a small facility that had once been a trading post. They sat across from each other in a simple room. No guards, no weapons, just two beings trying to understand each other. Why do you keep fighting? Lithara asked. You have lost so much. The coalition still has thousands of ships. You cannot win. Kyung-suk studied the alien carefully. Can I tell you a story about Earth? If you wish. There was a time, centuries ago, when my ancestors lived under the rule of others. Hey were told what to do, where to go, how to live. They were told to be grateful for the order that was imposed on them. And for a while, they obeyed. But obedience without consent is not peace. It is slavery. Eventually, my people said no. They fought for their freedom, even though the odds were impossible. Many died. But they won. Not because they were stronger, but because they were willing to pay any price for liberty. That is ancient history, no, Kyung-suk said firmly. That is who we are. That is humanity. We do not fight because we think we can win. We fight because surrendering would mean giving up everything that makes us human. The Council wants us to bow, to submit, to accept their authority over our lives. We will die first. Every one of us. And your coalition will spend the next 100 years fighting a guerrilla war. They cannot win because every human child is taught from birth that freedom is worth dying for. Lithara was quiet for a long time. The coalition says you started this. You refused reasonable demands. Kyung-suk pulled out a data tablet. Let me show you something. These are the demands the council made. They wanted us to abandon colonies we built on empty worlds. They wanted oversight of our internal affairs. They wanted reparations for the crime of settling planets nobody else wanted. Tell me, Counselor, what happens if your people refuse a council demand? We negotiate. We find compromise. And if you refuse to negotiate? Lithara opened her mouth, then closed it. The answer was obvious. The council would send fleets to enforce compliance, just like they had with humanity. See the problem? Kyung-suk said. The council has power, but it has forgotten that power without justice is tyranny. You can kill us all. You probably will if this war continues. But you cannot make us obey, and every species in the galaxy is watching. They are seeing that the Great Galactic Council needed 8 months and thousands of ships to fight a single species that just wanted to be left alone. Lithara left the meeting with much to think about. She returned to the council and presented her findings. The chamber erupted in debate. She admits they will never surrender, Vexter shouted. Then we must destroy them completely. Listen to yourself, Lethera snapped back. Listen to what you are saying. We started this war because humans would not follow our rules. Now you want to commit genocide because they will not surrender. When did we become monsters? The chamber divided. Some species wanted to continue the war. Others wanted to find a way out, but no one could agree on how. Meanwhile, Captain Daesun's brother, a pilot named Tae-Wan, led a raid on a coalition supply depot. 20 human ships attacked a facility guarded by 300 alien vessels. The humans destroyed the depot and escaped with minimal losses. How? Because they had spent 8 months learning how their enemy fought. They knew the patterns, the tactics, the weaknesses. The raid's success was not the important part. The important part was what the humans did next. They repaired the damaged alien ships they captured. They loaded them with supplies. And they sent them back to Coalition space with a message. We do not want to kill you. We want to be free. Stop attacking us, and we will stop fighting. Continue this war, and we will make you pay for every meter of space. The choice is yours. When those ships arrived at Coalition bases, filled with medicine and repair equipment instead of weapons, something broke. Soldiers who had been fighting humans for months suddenly questioned why they were fighting. Officers, who had lost friends to human raids, wondered if maybe, just maybe, the humans had a point. Back in the council chamber, the reports came in. 3 more species were withdrawing from the coalition. 5 others were demanding an immediate ceasefire. The unified front was collapsing. War Counselor Thexman faced the bitter truth. We cannot win this war. Not because we lack ships or weapons, but because we lack will. Our people are tired. They question the cause. Meanwhile, the humans fight with the same intensity as the first day. Every battle costs us more than them because we are fighting for control, and they are fighting for survival. Then what do you propose? Vexter asked. I propose we admit we made a mistake. I propose we end this war before we destroy ourselves trying to destroy them. Former High Counselor Vexstar was removed from power 3 days later. The coalition officially dissolved. The war was not over, but it was dying. Neither side had won. Both had lost so much. Ambassador Jiwoo received a message from Counselor Lethera. It was simple and direct. We want to talk. No demands, no threats. Just talk. Will you come? Jiwoo looked at the message for a long time. She thought about Captain Daesun, who had died at Bright Harbor. She thought about the thousands of humans who had given their lives defending their right to be free. She thought about what they would want her to do. She sent her reply. Oh, yes. But understand this. We will talk as equals, or we will not talk at all. Lethera's response came quickly. I would not have it any other way. The war was not over. But for the first time in 8 months, there was a possibility of something other than endless fighting. The galaxy held its breath and waited to see if 2 very different civilizations could find common ground. The humans had proven they would never surrender. Now they needed to prove they could make peace without losing what they had fought for. It would be the hardest battle yet, the neutral station where the peace talks. What happened was called Haven. It floated in empty space between human and council territory, owned by no one, claimed by no one. Ambassador Jiwoo arrived on a small diplomatic ship with only 2 aides, young Hannah, who had survived the entire war, and a new security officer named Jamin. Counselor Lethera was already there, along with representatives from 8 species. Notably absent were the ones who had pushed hardest for war. Vexstar was gone. Dexman had resigned. Kixra had been recalled by her people in disgrace. Ones who remained were those who had questioned the war from the beginning. They met in a simple room with a round table. No one sat higher than anyone else. No weapons were allowed, just people trying to find a way forward. Lethera spoke first. Ambassador Jiwoo, thank you for coming. I know trust is hard after everything that has happened. But I want to start with this. We were wrong. The council was wrong. We treated you as subjects when you were not. We demanded compliance when we should have offered cooperation. We tried to force you to follow rules you had no part in making. For all of this, I apologize. Ji-woo had prepared many speeches for this moment. She had prepared arguments, demands, conditions. Instead, she found herself simply saying, "Thank you. That matters more than you know." "But I need to understand something," Lethera continued. "Why did you refuse to negotiate? Even at the start, before any fighting, you could have talked with us. We might have found compromise. Instead, you said no and walked away. Why?" Ji-woo leaned back in her chair. "Can I ask you a question first? If I had come to you, to your homeworld, and told you that my people had decided you were expanding too fast, that you needed to abandon your colonies and submit to human oversight, what would you have said?" "I would have refused." "Would you have negotiated?" Lethera paused. "No, I suppose I would not have. I would have said it was not your business where my people chose to live. Exactly, that is why I walked away. The moment you present demands as non-negotiable, you are not offering to talk. You are issuing orders. Humans do not take orders from anyone we have not chosen to follow. This is not pride. This is who we are." Another representative, a being named Corvell, spoke up. "But you must have known we would attack. You must have known you could not win. Was freedom really worth all those deaths?" Ji-woo's expression became very still. "Officer Jamin, tell them about your family." The young man stood. He looked uncomfortable speaking in front of so many important people, but he spoke clearly. "My father was a farmer on Bright Harbor. My mother was a teacher. My little sister was 8 years old. They all died when your coalition attacked. My father died holding a rifle he barely knew how to use, defending the evacuation ships. Mother died making sure every child got off the planet before her. My sister died because she was too slow when the bombs fell." The room was silent. Jamin continued, "You ask if freedom was worth their deaths. My father would say yes. My mother would say yes. And my sister, if she could speak, would say yes. Because they were not dying for an abstract idea. They were dying for the right to live on a world they had built with their own hands. To raise their children without permission from people who had never set foot there. To make their own choices about their own lives. You call it stubbornness. We call it human." Jamin sat down. Several of the alien representatives looked away, unable to meet his eyes. President Sujin's face appeared on a screen. She had been listening from Earth. "I have been a politician for 40 years. I know how to compromise. I know how to negotiate. But there are some things that are not negotiable. The right to exist freely is one of them. The Council asked us to compromise on our existence. We refused. Not because we wanted war, but because the alternative was worse." "What alternative could be worse than war?" asked another representative. "Living as subjects instead of free beings," Sujin said simply. "Raising our children to believe that someone else has the right to control where they live, how they grow, what they can become. Teaching them to bow to power instead of standing for principle. That is a death slower than war, but just as final." Lethera absorbed this. "So what do you want? What would make peace possible?" Ji-woo pulled out a document. "We want what every species wants. The right to settle empty worlds without asking permission. The right to govern ourselves without outside interference. The right to trade, to travel, to exist in this galaxy as equals. Not subjects. Not inferiors, equals." "That is already what we offer all species," said one representative. "No," Ji-woo said quietly. "You offer obedience in exchange for protection. You offer a place at the table in exchange for following rules you make without us. You offer the appearance of equality while maintaining the power to enforce compliance. That is not equality. That is hierarchy with polite words." Long silence followed. Finally, Lethera spoke. "Then we need to change the Council itself. We need to rebuild it as something truly equal, where all species have a voice, not just the powerful ones. Where rules are made by consensus, not imposed by force. Where disputes are resolved through discussion, not threats." "You are describing something that has never existed in galactic history," said Corvell. "Perhaps that is the problem," Ji-woo said. "Perhaps it is time for something new." The talks continued for days. Slowly, a framework emerged. The Council would be reformed as the Galactic Assembly. Every species would have equal representation. New rules would require majority approval. Enforcement would only happen in cases of actual harm to others, not simply for violations of order. Disputes would go to arbitration before military action. Most importantly, the right to settle empty worlds would be recognized as fundamental. No species could claim territory they were not actively using. The galaxy was big enough for everyone. Former High Counselor Vexstar, watching the proceedings from exile, contacted Jiwoo privately. They met in a small room, just the two of them. Vexstar looked old and tired. "I do not understand you," he said. "I have tried for months to understand why you chose war over simple compliance. Why you threw away lives for pride." "It was not pride," Jiwoo said. "Let me tell you about my grandmother. She lived through a time on Earth when our country was occupied by another power. They were told to be grateful for the order imposed on them. They were told resistance was futile. They were told that accepting their place would bring peace. My grandmother fought in the resistance. She lost her husband, her brother, 2 children. She lived to see our country free again. Before she died, she told me something I have never forgotten." What did she say? She said that the most dangerous thing in the universe is someone who has nothing left to lose except their dignity. Take away a person's home, and they will build another. Take away their possessions, and they will gather more. But take away their dignity, their right to stand as equals, and they become something no army can defeat. Because a person fighting for dignity is already free in the only way that matters. You cannot threaten them with death, because they have already decided that living without dignity is worse. You cannot bargain with them because they have nothing you can offer that is worth more than what you are asking them to give up. Vexstar was quiet for a long time. "We could have destroyed you. If we had been willing to pay the price, we could have eliminated humanity." "Yes," Jiwoo agreed. "You could have, but then you would have had to live with what that made you. And every other species in the galaxy would have seen what happens to those who refuse to bow. You would have created more problems than you solved, so we could not win. No one wins wars like this. We both lost. The question now is whether we can learn from what we lost." 3 months later, the Galactic Assembly was formally established. The old council structure was dissolved. New representatives were chosen. Humans took their seat at the table, one voice among many, but an equal voice engineer Bora continued her work on New Jeju. The colony had survived the war. Now, it would survive the peace. Governor Nam remained in his position, still doing budget reports and fixing problems as they arose. Life went on. Captain Daesung's name was inscribed on a memorial at Bright Harbor, along with thousands of others who had died defending freedom. Families visited to remember. Children asked questions about the war. Parents struggled to explain why so many had to die, but they also explained what had been won: the right to live free, the right to make their own choices, the right to exist as equals in a galaxy that had tried to make them subjects. Ambassador Gu sat in the new assembly chambers during the first session. When the question of trade agreements came to a vote, she listened to all sides, discussed with her delegation, and then said clearly, "We agree to these terms." The representative next to her, a being from a species that had fought against humans during the war, looked at her curiously. "You agreed?" Just like that. No demands, no conditions, no argument. Gu smiled. "You asked. You did not demand. You treated us as equals and presented options for us to consider. That is negotiation. That is what we always wanted. But during the war, you would not negotiate at all." "No," Giwoo said. "During the war, you wanted us to negotiate our surrender. There is a difference. Now you want us to negotiate cooperation. That we can do." The session continued. Humans participated fully, offering ideas, accepting compromises, building relationships. They were not always the easiest partners. They argued forcefully for their positions. They pushed back when they felt something was unjust. But they also listened, learned, and worked with others. The galaxy slowly learned to work with humanity. It was not always smooth. There were disagreements, conflicts, difficult moments. But they were resolved through discussion, not force, through compromise, not threats, and humanity, for all their stubbornness, proved to be good neighbors when treated with respect. They shared technology. They helped build. They defended others when asked. They became valued members of the galactic community, not because they had been forced to join, but because they had chosen to. Years later, students across the galaxy studied the human war as a turning point. Not because of the battles, though, those were dramatic enough, but because of what it taught, that power without justice leads to resistance, that forced compliance breeds resentment, that true cooperation requires mutual respect, and perhaps most importantly, that there are some beings in the universe who will never surrender their dignity, no matter the cost. Understanding that was the beginning of wisdom. Ambassador Ji Woo eventually retired. She lived to see humanity become a respected voice in galactic affairs. She watched her children and grandchildren grow up in a universe where being human meant something different than it had in her youth. It meant being equal, being free, being respected. It meant being part of something larger than themselves, but never less than themselves. On her last day, young Hannah, now an ambassador herself, asked Ji Woo if she had any regrets. Many, Ji Woo said. I regret every life lost in the war. I regret that we could not make the council understand us without fighting. I regret the pain and suffering, but do you regret saying no? Ji Woo smiled. No, never that. Sometimes the most important word in any language is no. It is the word that stops tyranny. It is the word that preserves dignity. It is the word that makes all other words meaningful. We said no, and because we did, all the yeses that came after actually mattered. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed it, not through conquest or domination, but by simply refusing to be less than they were, by standing firm on principle, by being willing to pay any price for freedom, and in doing so, they had given the galaxy something it had not known it was missing, a reminder that freedom is not granted. It is claimed. It is defended. It is lived every day by beings who refuse to bow. That was humanity's gift to the stars. Not technology or weapons or power, but the simple, profound, dangerous idea that every being has the right to stand tall and say, I am free. And that is not negotiable.